Hello and welcome to Civic Spaces, the podcast from the European Civic Forum in which we sit down with those fighting for systemic change in Europe and beyond. For today's episode, the fourth in our series on the European elections, we sit down with ECF Co-President Raffaella Bolini to discuss the rise of the far right and the need for progressive movements to unite. This interview took place just ahead of the votes on the 6th to the 9th of June. Thank you very much, Raffaella, for joining us today. We're really pleased to have you on.
I'm very happy to be with you as usual.
Thank you. So today we wanted to just talk a little bit about the rise of far right and reactionary forces that we're seeing across Europe, and what we can do to have a more hopeful and positive, have more hope and positivity in these times, and what we can do to turn the tide. And we thought you would be an interesting person to speak to about that, Raffaella. So, it's an undeniable fact that if you see what's happening in many countries across Europe, but also in the context of the EU elections that are coming up, hard right, reactionary, far right, whatever you would like to describe them as, these parties and forces are really growing. And I wanted to hear from you. Where do you think this came from? Like, how did we get to this stage?
You know, I think that we are living in this period of, the result of a long process of the generation of my parents, for example. After the dictatorship, after the Second World War, they were able, step by step, and struggle after struggle, because it was not so easy to conquer for them public schools, public health, workers, women, and democratic rights. And for them, this was the deep meaning of democracy. Mm-hmm. They felt democracy as the space and the tool really needed to conquer a better life. And when the Berlin Wall collapsed, many of us, we really thought that the time has come to have this kind of situation, democracy as a space and tool necessary to gain social rights all over Europe. And not only Europe, all over Europe and all over the world. But I have to tell you that, as it's evident, we were really very wrong, because immediately after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, instead of merging freedom and equality, the global capital decided, on the contrary, that it was the time to break any social compromise and to search for a complete and total victory. And so, in the last 30 years, we have seen a real war against everything that could limit the power of the market. Workers' rights, politics, popular power. And it has been a permanent process, not only in Europe, and it has produced an immense amount of social insecurity in people and communities. Because people and communities have lost day by day their rights. So I think that from this process come this enormous distrust in democracy. Because if democracy is not able to guarantee a good life. Why should people believe in democracy? And so we always tell it in the European Civic Forum that fear and insecurity feed the extreme right consensus. But according to me, it's important to remember ourselves that this is not the case. These don't come by chance because they prepared themselves for decades. They have their own think tanks, they have their own economists, they have their own intellectuals, they have an international network, they have an international system for funding all over the world. And they studied how to conquer cultural hegemony among the normal people. So they had, and they have, a vision and a project of society. Very negative for us, but they have a vision. And the problem is that in these 30 years, an alternative, so strong vision and project of economy and society on the progressive side has been not there. Because the majority of the progressive forces accepted more or less 100%, 90% the market diktat. And so people didn't find any more than self as their defenders.
I wanted to know why do you think it is that the more mainstream progressive forces accepted these market norms?
Why?
Yeah.
I think that there has been different reasons. One reason was the incapability of the progressive forces to assume that a new progressive vision in that years, I'm speaking about the 80s were growing up. It was at the time of an enormous European peace movement, an enormous European ecological movement, an enormous one, a period of, big women fight, and, a new left and a new progressive approach was there, brought by the grassroots and by an enormous participation of people, and mainly of young people. But the majority of the progressive forces didn't understand that this should be the reaction to the Berlin Wall collapse. Because of course, all this movement, I remember very well because it is my generation history. We had nothing in common with the experience of the real socialism in the Eastern country. We were against. We were supporting all of the democratic opposition in the Eastern countries, and we were not the only one. We had in mind a complete different idea of left, a combination among freedom, real freedom, social rights, democracy, real democracy, full democracy, and the capability to afford all the new challenges. Because I remember very well when I was really 20, the ecological problem does not exist at all for us, for us in Europe. Nobody was speaking about it. Everybody was in favor of the nuclear power, civil nuclear power. And then little by little we discovered, no, this is not good at all. So I think that they missed the opportunity to uh, uh, to, 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 to react to the Berlin Wall collapse, not with the idea, oh, okay, it's the end, capital is winning, and now we have to accept the, you know, the domination of the capital. They should have said, we are very happy that the Berlin Wall collapsed. We are very happy. This is what we wanted. This is what we need. And now, together, East and West, we could find a way to live together in solidarity, in equality, and in freedom. So, in a real democracy. And this is what they did not do. And I think that we are still paying these prices.
I'm wondering if you feel like this is happening again. Then it was with the Berlin Wall and this idea of freedom, and now maybe our newest challenge is how to combat the latest rise of the far right and the normalization of their rhetoric. Do you think social movements can learn from the past mistakes and hopefully build an alternative and kind of join together in that proposal or in that fight together?
I believe that yes, this is what the political forces should do now if they really want to try to defeat the extreme right. I mean, the extreme right are not ashamed at all to say very clearly for what they fight for. They are not ashamed at all to tell very clear what they want to do. And I think that the progressive political forces should do the same, of course, on opposite values, but by saying very clearly that they are on the side of the people's rights, and to be also coherent every day, to prove every day that they are on this side, in order to try to reconquer again, the consensus of the people they have lost. It's not so easy, for example, now to convince people to go to vote. Because even, for example, when they like a lot, appreciate a lot the work done by civil society in the communities, in the neighborhood, or in the social movements, but they don't feel the correspondence among the work of the new movements and of the organized civil society and the political party. But when they have to go to vote for the election, they have to vote for the political parties. 99%, apart some independent and so on. So it's very difficult to tell them, yes, we are not there. They are different from us. We criticize them, but in any case, it's important to go to vote for them. It's not so easy.
No.
And of course, on one side, I think that we have not to stop by saying that in any case, even if it's difficult, even if sometimes seem to be contradictory, but the possibility to vote, it's one of the few tools normal people has in terms of power in their hands. And if they don't go to vote, they will provide the victory to the one which have power in their hand, and a so big power that they even don't need the vote to go to vote to rule our life, because they have the economical power, the financial power. And so in any case, even if it's not, a fiesta, I think that it's important that we say people that, okay, go in any case. Don't let only the fascists go to vote. Because, for example, in this kind of situation, for example, in my country, where for the first time the extreme right is on the government, they are very excited, and all of their people will go to vote for the European election. So they will go to vote, and our people risk not to go to vote. So in any case, even if you dislike the existing politics, I think that we have to tell people to go to vote. But on the other side, as I told before, the main responsibility is on the progressive political forces, because they have to change their approach and come again, like in many cases was in the past, to be really close to the people, where people is, not only searching, the vote during the electoral period or during the poll, in order, and in the situation in which you consider people only as electors. People should be considered citizens, owners of rights every day of their life, and the political parties should become again the real representative of these people every day in the politics sphere and in the institutions. I don't know if in general, the progressive framework will be able to do it. What I can say that in general, the progressive front is more able to react to the emergency than to be positive in a situation in which they can decide or rule something. So perhaps the fact that we are going to the most dramatical election in the history of the European Union could bring to some positive results in the next period.
There would be a nice bright side to a very unfortunate
If only.
result. Yeah, and I mean, it's really interesting everything that you said about the important, like the paradox almost of criticizing these people and then encouraging people to go out and vote for them. But of course, the importance of it. How do we find this sort of this hope and this positive attitude that even though it seems so options seem so limited, that there is a possibility for it to get better? How do you stay motivated in that sense?
You mean what we can do?
Yeah.
What we can do in this kind of situation?
Yeah, and how do we stay positive and well, I know you don't like the word resilient, but resilient.
I think that we, first of all, we have to feel our responsibility. Because we are in a very risky period, and it's an unusual period. I'm 63, so I have seen a lot of period of the life, and this is a very special one. It's a very risky period. So something which can provide us with courage and good energy is to feel that we cannot simply go on with the normal business as usual. We have to be at the level of the challenge. And really, we have to avoid the risk to think, okay, but I do my job. I try to do my best, and that's all. No, because the usual work is very precious, but in this kind of risky situation is not enough. because if not, we will not find ourselves in this kind of situation. So I think that first of all, it's a problem, yes, of really of our moral approach. And I think that we have to be aware that we can do a lot. We can do a lot. First of all, I think that we can prove the strength and the power of our values and principles, of our vision in people's everyday lives, with all forms of social solidarity, with all forms of getting together, in the neighborhood, in the school, in the communities. I think that we could really working every day as small groups, big groups, associations, committees, to show people something which is very, very, very easy and even naive. That if we are alone, we are sad. If we are together, we are happier. And if we are together, it's easier to if possible, to face and solve our problem. If not, to take the burden of our problem on our shoulder. And I think that in this sense, this really can change the mind of people, because our people now it's in this kind of political confusion, because they come from an experience, a very long experience, a very spread experience of fears, of social problem, but also of loneliness, isolation. The idea that you have to save yourself by yourself, that all the people you have around are in general your enemies. And this is not a way to have a good life, even with problems, because we cannot guarantee the paradise and the heaven to everybody. Of course, not now, and not even in the long period, but at least to live in a better way, because you are not alone, and you, together with others, you feel the strength and the hope. I don't feel that we can build a resistance and also an alternative front, let's say, inside the society, thinking that we can use the rage, the frustration, because this is a negative feeling. We have to try to build up at least some little elements of hope, because hope, on the hope you can build, on rage you can only destroy, and we need to build. So this is, according to me, something which really we can do. And then I think that another elements we can, another brick we can put, in this way, is that we should be more visible. So welcome to mobilization, social movements, demonstrations, campaign, but every time trying not to speak only to ourselves, not to refer only to our bubble of activists, but try to find the language to speak with the most distant from us, with the one which are not committed at all. And I think that, for example, we have some very good example in these new generation movements, the climate justice activists, the new women movements. I think that they made a lot in terms of spreading, awareness and good values among really normal people. If I think about, for example, women movement against violence and against the harassment in the workplaces, there has been a sort of really of, awareness from really normal people and because they discover that, okay, these they are telling my experience and I can do something. I think that this is very important. And the last element we can bring to a sort of new kind of resistance and building up of a new vision is that we really should need to be more capable to put together our fragments, because each sector of the organized civil society own one little fragment of the new society, one little fragment: ecology, the migrants, social justice, democracy, civic space, women, LGBT, gender issues, and so. Yes, but for a normal people, if they look 1,000 fragment, they don't see the picture. And we have to make the picture easy to be read, easy to be understood. And for example, it's only an example. If we fight for migrants' rights, we should find the way to put together the fight for migrants' rights and the fight for natives or workers or neighborhood right, because in this case we can prove that rights goes together, they are not in opposition. If not, you ever will find somebody who will tell you, yeah, you are defending the migrant, what about my neighborhood, we have no job, we have no pension, we have no health assistance. So we have to put together the fragments, because if we want to produce hope, there has to be very clear in front of the people an offer of a different society, which has to be also attractive. Because if it's attractive and you have the hope that it is possible to reach this kind of society, you can become passionate of it. You can decide, okay, I will spend some hours a day to fight for it. And if not, why people should come with us?
I think there was something really amazing about, I don't know if I'm saying to myself too much, but about the language you mentioned, about building on hope and not on hate, and how sometimes rage or hate seems like something that will spark action faster. And that's, I guess, why the far right uses it so much. But they also use a lot of victim language. And as you mentioned, in your country, in Italy, they're now in power. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how they're using that narrative of being victims, which is something that is working for them really well, even when they do have all the power.
This is very, very true. I appreciate so much this question, because you are really right. In my country, they rule the government, but the extreme right goes on by presenting themselves in front of the public opinion as oppressed and persecuted. Every day they claim the right, after decades of oppression, to assert their values and ideas. The problem is that most of their ideas are contrary to the Italian Constitution and to the legislation of my country, because the defense of fascism, racism, discrimination against minority, hate speeches are forbidden by law in my country. The problem is that this is a very dangerous attitude, because while they every day increase the repression against dissent, and while they are targeting every day all the counter powers that safeguard our democracy, despite of it, They every day say that this repression is a way to restore a fair balance of power, because these democratic actors, judiciary, independent media, democratic opposition, intermediate bodies, according to them, are part of an oppressive system against freedom and liberties. It's a huge job to deconstruct this narrative, and it's a huge job to construct a counter narrative, because the concept my freedom ends where the freedom of others begins is not very popular in this period in our societies that have absorbed the idea of freedom that means no rules and no responsibility. I think that this is what we have to work on. Freedom and responsibility go together. Otherwise, no social cohesion and no living together will be ever possible. And in barbarism, so freedom without any kind of responsibility, barbarism without rules, only the strongest and the most powerful, the most armed and the most evil will win. So I think that the only way by which we can defeat them is really to start again to put together these two fundamental values, freedom and responsibility, because freedom alone is what they are using in order to cancel all the limits, for example, our constitution put to the barbarians' values.
Yeah, I mean, wow, it's super interesting.
This question has been really, it opened my mind a lot, because I didn't think until now about it. Thank you very much. I will use it a lot. Yeah, no, because really it's true. It's true. Every day, every day in the television. There is a plot against us. They are in the government. They have the majority of voters. What do they want? Which kind of plot?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see what they how narratives of powerlessness works really well for them, and how it's a way for them to garner some, as you were saying, rage, which is only going to be destructive. And thank you so much, Raffaella, for all your answers. They're super incredible and enlightening. We really, really appreciate
you both are wonderful. Before it was only Ben, now you are two, and both wonderful. And every time I speak with you, I feel more clever. Really, you open my mind. I don't know why, only by looking.
And we learn so much every time we speak to you, Raffaella, so it's really a pleasure.
So we have to speak more frequently.
Absolutely.
For sure.
You've been listening to Civic Spaces from the European Civic Forum with me, Ben Goodwin, and my colleague Iñaki Artabalda. Many thanks to Raffaella Bolini for taking the time to talk with us today. If you liked this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to Civic Spaces wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.